Hello and welcome to the MovieKing Podcast. My name is David Jurmann and I'll be your host. On today's episode, I'm going to review the film Wake Up Dead Man, and in the second half, I'm going to review the movie Five Nights at Freddy's 2. So starting off with Wake Up Dead Man, for anyone who isn't already aware of what this movie is, it's a murder mystery on Netflix, and normally I wouldn't put, that much time into reviewing a Netflix original. I just don't think, that many people watch them or are even really aware of them. But in this case, I think it's worth doing. So, Wake Up Dead Man is a spin-off of the great mystery movie Knives Out from not too long ago, and then a few years back we've got another movie from this franchise called Glass Onion. The release strategy for this movie is kind of unfortunate because Knives Out was distributed by Lionsgate back in 2019, and it got a proper theatrical release. I remember seeing it in theaters, and I was really impressed by it. I went to see it again, I think. Then Netflix made a deal with writer and director Rian Johnson to release two films on their platform, two sequels to Knives Out. And Netflix typically isn't fond of major theatrical releases, but they made an incredibly rare exception for Glass Onion. And that movie got a 1 or 2 week wide release, so I got to see it at my local AMC before it was released on Netflix. And given the current mess that is the Warner Brothers merger that Netflix is currently winning, we'll see if Netflix changes their tune on movies in theaters, since they're promising to do more of that in the future should they buy Warner Brothers, so we'll see what happens with that. But unfortunately, Wake Up Dead Man did not get a full theatrical release, not even the 2 week window that Glass Onion got. It was barely even playing near me, so I had to drive 45 minutes just to see it at the nearest theater. And that was a local neighborhood theater. It wasn't this crazy fancy AMC with recliners or anything. It was just a normal movie theater. And generally, though, I much prefer watching movies in theaters if I can. I don't care if I'm already subscribed to Netflix. I'd rather pay another $10, $15 to watch it with an audience on the big screen. To me, that's worthwhile. I understand, some people are just I have Netflix, I'll just wait till it comes out. I have a great TV at home, a great sound setup, whatever. And if you do and you like that stuff, that's great. To me, though, theatrical is everything. It makes such a difference to me in how I watch and interpret a movie. At home, I just feel I'm very distracted. My phone's right there. There's noise in the background. People are talking. It's just not the ideal way to watch a movie. And, so I really wanted to see it in theaters. Unfortunately, the theater I did see this movie at had some annoying technical difficulties. Halfway into the movie, it just started lagging and cutting out. It was fixed, and thankfully they went back a few minutes so I didn't miss anything. But anywho, on to my thoughts on the film. I think all the Knives Out movies are good. The first one is great. Glass Onion was a step down, but still very fun. And Wake Up Dead Man, the newest one, is very good. Rian Johnson is frankly such a good filmmaker. I'm aware he's been polarizing with Star Wars fans, but even the Last Jedi haters I know really like his other stuff. And I think that makes these movies so interesting because they have all these qualities you expect from a good mystery, but they also tend to do what Johnson is most well known for as a filmmaker, and that's subvert expectations. Rian Johnson loves throwing twists and turns at you to make you rethink and recontextualize everything you've seen before. And I said it when it came out, but Knives Out feels like more of a whodunit than a whodunit. And Glass Onion was more of a traditional whodunit, but it still had some big tricks up its sleeve to throw viewers off. It did some interesting things with the way it was structured to kind of make you rethink everything. And then Wake Up Dead Man, the new one, is interestingly the most traditional mystery of them all. It's not so much about throwing the audience off track or doing some major twist with the storytelling. I think Johnson knows that people will get tired of him doing that every movie, so he decided to just tone it down. And the movie does have some, complexity to it. It's a simple mystery in that, it's not, overly complicated with, the way it's told, but just the mystery itself does have a lot of twists and still feels very original and feels, kind of surprising in some ways. But yeah, this movie puts a very big focus on things like the themes and performances, and this movie follows a church that has lost its way, and it looks a lot at what it means to be a good person versus someone who only cares about money and fame. It has some good commentary on religion as a whole that I found interesting, And I thought the story in this movie is maybe the strongest in the whole trilogy, and the performances are similar. Daniel Craig is amazing as always in this role. He's so funny and just so engaging. Like, every time he's on screen, you're just like, I could watch this man all day, and he's great. Newcomers Josh O'Connor, Glenn Close, and Josh Brolin in particular all knock it out of the park. They were all terrific here. Everyone else is good, but these are all the people who I thought stuck out to me the most. I'd say the supporting characters are relatively weak this time around. I wanted to spend some more time with them because they do have interesting stories and you learn a lot about them in the beginning of the movie, but beyond that, you just don't learn that much. And there are these stretches of the film where we don't see them a whole lot, and I was just kind of like, oh, I would have liked to, get to know more of the supporting characters, because in these types of movies, you want to see more of certain characters if they could be important down the line. While I'm at it, I also think the pacing feels a little on the long side. The movie's a bit over 2 hours, and it takes around 30 or 40 minutes until the story really kicks in. It's all entertaining, but I would have liked the movie to be a little leaner, and there are maybe a few times in the third act that felt convoluted to me with how it was trying to explain everything. There's a very wordy, exposition dump that's kind of just revealing everything. I think Knives Out and Glass Onion both had those, but I remember it being a little easier to follow in those two. This one, it just felt like the mystery was so, there was so much going on at a point where I was like, does that track? Does that work? And I think that might go away on rewatch since I was trying to just process everything, but it's just something I noticed. I really think this is a very good movie, though. It's quite funny, it has good drama, an exciting mystery, it's very well made with great cinematography and production value, and it's surprising. Like with Glass Onion, I don't think who did it is that big of a twist, but everything around it is not how I expected it to go. But yeah, I'd highly recommend Wake Up Dead Man. If you enjoyed all the other Knives Out movies, you'll almost certainly enjoy this one too. If you haven't seen those movies, you can still follow this just fine, like on its own. You can still watch this and, be able to figure out everything. It's not important that you watch the others. It's kind of like, if you watch Murder on the Orient Express or Death on the Nile, like, you can follow either of those movies without seeing the other one. This is a similar thing, but you should see the others too, because they're all good. But I'm definitely bummed this is just kind of getting dumped on Netflix, because it was a really fun theater experience where everyone was laughing and reacting together, and I just don't think you get that at home. Like, watching it by yourself or even with a couple other people, I mean, it's still enjoyable for sure, but just in a theater was definitely the way to watch it. Right now, people are talking about this movie, and I hope the conversation on it just doesn't disappear in a week. I hope it lasts a bit longer, and, I doubt it, but I think it honestly would be worthy of some awards recognition, in a few months. But really, it's definitely one of the more entertaining movies of the whole year, and I just had so much fun watching it. I'll absolutely be rewatching it again soon. So, I'm gonna rate Wake Up Dead Man a B+. Alright, and next up is Five Nights at Freddy's 2. Oh boy, this one's a hoot. A little quick context, I'm familiar with the Five Nights at Freddy's games. I never really played them because they're very heavy on jump scares, and I think the kind this game has is just, the kind of jump scare I hate, where it's like, completely sudden, in your face, very loud, very annoying like that. I just couldn't even really watch gameplay of it. It was too much for me. I'm not very caught up on all the lore, so I don't know too much of the ins and outs of this world. I am familiar with some of the memes and references to this game, though. I saw the first movie a few years ago and honestly thought it was trash. It was pretty boring, it had lame characters, and was really only entertaining because I had an audience packed with fans of the game who treated every single reveal and cameo like it was Avengers Endgame. I mean, it was a very fun experience because literally, like, everyone was cheering and going nuts, and I didn't even understand half the things they were clapping at, but it was like, well, why wouldn't you want to experience a movie like that? Especially when it's bad, like, having the enthusiasm there definitely helps make it more entertaining. But, it was a terrible movie, but I will say, there are a few things I liked about it, such as the cinematography and animatronics. If I'm being honest, though, I remember very little about that movie besides some small parts of the story, and it's just an extremely forgettable film. Like, going into the second one, I literally, barely remembered what happened in the first film, but When this new one was announced, I had virtually no excitement because of how little I enjoyed the first one, but I did kind of hope that maybe they learned their lesson and fixed some of the issues that movie had. Right before this sequel came out, I saw that reviews were only around half as good as the first film. Now keep in mind, for reference, that movie has a 33% on Rotten Tomatoes. That's 33 out of 100. So you can do the math on that one, about half of 33. And, that did make me a little more curious to check it out because I, personally, this is like a me thing, I enjoy watching terribly rated movies sometimes. Like, if I see something, a 30% isn't really anything to write home about. Like, that's not going to make me want to watch it. But if you get, 10, 15% or lower, that's like almost nobody liked it, because that means it's really bad. And I was curious to see it because I'm like, typically a score isn't that low unless it's truly awful. So that made me want to check it out. I wasn't able to go opening weekend because it was so packed, but I went on a weekday in a premium format only a few days later, only to find that there was literally nobody else there. So I sat there by myself watching Five Nights at Freddy's 2, which, is definitely not the way I wanted to watch it, because literally, half the reason I wanted to see Five Nights at Freddy's 2 in theaters was so I can get that type of audience reaction again that I got from the first film, but I couldn't get that, and I was, getting nervous, because I'm like, if this movie's boring, it's going to be miserable watching it. But you know what, let me tell you, this thing is even worse than the first film, and it really is. Somehow, though, some way, they managed to make the problems the first film had even worse. The difference? Five Nights at Freddy's 2 is actually a guilty pleasure. Unlike the first film, which I would literally have no urge to watch by myself, this sequel is so incompetent and so stupid that I was laughing so hard at a lot of the things happening in it, and I was just having a great time. Even though I was by myself, even though there was no one else laughing with me, I had a good time watching this movie, and not, it's not unironic. It's not like I actually had fun with the movie. I was, laughing at the movie, not with it. And I can only imagine how much better of an experience it would have been, with a bunch of crazed fans there, too, who were freaking out at everything. The first movie was co-written by director Emma Tammy and the game's creator Scott Cawthon, and Tammy returns to direct the sequel, but Cawthon wrote this one all by himself. And maybe the man is very good with video games, but I did not like the writing in this movie at all. There are small problems like inconsistencies with characters, logic, and how jump scares are built. Things that you just wouldn't expect in a professional production like this. And then there are these huge problems on a dialogue and storytelling front where I just couldn't believe what I was watching. Especially for the dialogue, it's terrible. There's one scene where a kid is panicking and telling people that another kid is in danger, and literally every parent there is like, hey, adults are talking here, go tell your mom. And I was just laughing at that, who are you people? What is this? No one talks like this. If a kid's freaking out like that, a kid's in danger, no parents are just gonna stand there and be like, you know what, actually, go find someone else to talk about that. They're like, we don't care. That's not how that works. Maybe one adult could do that, but everyone doing that is just stupid. And every scene in the movie is like this, where people just don't act or talk normally. Logic is ignored because Cawthon needs certain things to happen in the movie, so he just has to just defy logic by any means necessary. And in that way, it feels like a student film or fan fiction. But speaking of fan fiction, there are clearly so many references to the games and memes and lore in this movie, but none of it is well placed, so it's incredibly obvious when the movie is making a reference to something, even if you don't get it, which literally, probably more than half the time I was like, I don't even know what this is a reference to, but I could tell it's a reference because it feels like one, you're just watching and you're like, well, it feels like there were these pauses after someone would say something, you're waiting for an audience to react to it. It was just very awkward. I think the whole thing, though, is one of the movie's core issues because it treats the audience as stupid and assumes everyone watching it is familiar with the games, which just isn't true. Maybe a large portion of the people going opening weekend are familiar with the games, but everyone else, like me, not so much. And I'm not even I know at least a little bit about the games. I'm not in the total casual audience for it, but maybe to the people who know the games, this movie will make sense, but to anyone else, myself included, It's incomprehensible. It makes no sense. There are more times where I can count where I rolled my eyes and laughed out loud because of how little sense the movie makes. And it's unfortunate because I think Emma Tammy tries her best to direct this thing. The cinematography also looks nice and the score is great again. The animatronics look just as good, if not even better than last time. But the script lets the movie down so much, and the actors down too, that nobody can save it. Nobody can make the dialogue work. Nobody can make the story better. It sucks. And that's not to mention that the climax of this movie is one of the dumbest and most hilariously anticlimactic things I've seen all year. It's really bad. So, as you can tell, I really don't recommend Five Nights at Freddy's 2 to the average person. There's really only two types of people who should watch this. One, the big fans of the games who will watch this movie no matter what, despite, no matter how terrible reviews are. Those people will watch it because they're fans of the games, and those people will probably enjoy this movie to some degree. I don't know if they'll love it, but they'll probably at least be entertained by it and get some more out of the lore, I guess. I think they're the only ones with a chance of enjoying this somewhat unironically. But the other people who should watch this movie is just anyone who wants a fun, guilty pleasure and wants to see how ridiculously funny it is, and, not on purpose. Otherwise, save your money and save your time. I would suggest you watch Wake Up Dead Man instead. So, I'm going to rate Five Nights at Freddy's 2 a D. And that about does it for this episode. If you want to follow my reviews, you can find me on Letterboxd at MovieKing1224. You can also listen to this podcast on your favorite apps such as Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Music. If you have any comments or feedback, I would love to hear it and improve the show. And of course, if you've enjoyed this episode, please consider liking, subscribing, and hitting the notification bell to hear more like it. I appreciate you all so much for listening, and I'll talk to you next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.